Hello again. I'm going to look a little like a space creature with the headphones on. I decided to do that because the sound quality is so much better with headphones than with the ambient noise and the built-in microphone in the computer. So if I look a little odd, I apologize for the distractions. Also, my glasses are going to be constantly reflecting from the screen. It's one of those technical issues that comes with the territory, I suppose. So, last week we talked about clauses, both independent and dependent. And remember that a clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. An independent clause is actually a sentence that can stand by itself. A dependent clause, although it has both a subject and a verb, cannot stand by itself. Usually this is because it is introduced by some word like since or because or until. As an example, the clause until Mary arrives is a dependent clause because we still need more information about what is pending, what happens or doesn't happen until Mary arrives. We don't know. We need more information, and that information is probably contained in a missing independent clause. The various combinations of independent and dependent clauses will give us various types of sentences. Indeed, there are four types of sentence: a simple sentence, a compound sentence, a complex sentence, and a compound complex sentence. Now, while I believe it's important to be able to identify sentences according to type, I believe it is even more important to be able to identify how various types of words function within a sentence. With that in mind, we will return to the topic of simple, compound, complex, and compound complex sentences in a later lesson. For this session, I would like to refer to the text, and here it is. There we go. Issues in Advanced Grammar. I hope you have your copy by now. So, referring to the text, I'd like to talk about the 8 sentence patterns that the authors identify. Let's be clear that a sentence pattern is not the same thing as a sentence type. Again, the sentence type is simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. You can find various sentence patterns within those 4 sentence types, but I don't want to muddy the water any more than I have already. So I urge you to read the text in the description of all 8 sentence patterns very carefully. I will not waste your time by going over all 8 sentence patterns, but I do want to make some specific comments. First of all, do be aware of the 4 elements in English, the 4 elements of sentences in English. Those are subjects, verbs, sometimes called predicates, objects, and complements. The explanation of these terms in the text at the bottom of page 62 and the top of page 63, those explanations are short and to the point. And my next comment has to do with sentence pattern number 2 at the bottom of page 63. Keep in mind that this pattern is for the verb be and other non-action verbs of appearance or condition. In addition to the examples found in the text at the bottom of page 63 and the top of page 64, we could add the following examples. She got engaged. They look hungry. That sounds funny. The examples given in the text for pattern 3 on page 64 only contain forms of the verb be. Just as in pattern 2, sentences in pattern 3 could very well have the verb become. The original sentence in the text reads, Deborah is our captain. We very well could say, Deborah became our captain. Dancing is my passion. Dancing became my passion. And please pay attention to the term in pattern 3, subject complement nominative. A subject complement nominative is simply a very intimidating term that refers to a noun or pronoun after the verb be or become. Here are some sentences with subject complement nominatives in the form of a question. Who are you? Who are you? The word you is the subject complement nominative. Response in a very formal English. It is Bill and I. Bill and I. Those words, those three words, are the subject complement nominative. It's the noun that comes after the verb be. Now in patterns 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all of those deal with transitive verbs. You'll remember that a transitive verb is a word that performs some action on the noun or pronoun that follows it. And that noun or pronoun following the transitive verb is called the direct object. The text gives some good examples of sentences with direct objects in pattern 4. You can find that on page 64 of the text. Some examples: Mary baked some cookies. We elected our officers. Dad bought a boat yesterday. I hate spiders. I also hate snakes. Pattern 4 on page 64 is classic. Subject, verb, direct object. Now, pattern 5, also on page 64, is subject, verb, indirect object, and direct object. The term indirect object is introduced here. Now, the indirect object is often going to be a pronoun, such as me, you, him, her, us, or them. But it can also, and also is frequently, a noun. An indirect object shows who is going to receive or benefit from the direct object. And the text gives us some examples. At the bottom of page 64, we see the sentence, Mary baked her brother a cake. What did she bake? A cake. Who did she bake it for? Her brother. In fact, notice we can also use a prepositional phrase, as in, Mary baked a cake for her brother. And in that example, Mary baked a cake for her brother, the prepositional phrase, for her brother, serves as the indirect object. The authors of the text say that their view is that her brother is just as much as an indirect object as in the shorter sentence. It's a relatively small point, since the important thing is to notice who receives or benefits from the direct object. That's the indirect object. Who's getting use of that cake that Mary baked? All right, page 65 with pattern 6. This seems to be very complicated. There's subject, verb, adverb complement, direct object, or direct object followed by adverb complement. One of the characteristics of the adverb complement is that it can almost always be position switched. Another characteristic is that the adverb complement fundamentally changes the meaning of the verb, as illustrated in verb pairs such as to look versus to look up, and to wear versus to wear out. Now, some grammars call these combinations of verb plus preposition, some places call them phrasal verbs, and they treat them, those grammars, those particular books, they treat them as a single verb without invoking a term such as adverb complement. Now, I am one who prefers the term phrasal verb, but the specific terminology is again beside the point. We will use the framework that the authors provide because it does work quite nicely. Now, pattern 7 at the bottom of page 65 is subject, verb, direct object, object complement adjectival. And yes, that's how you pronounce it. It's adjectival. And again, there's some new terminology here. Object complement adjectival. That is simply an adjective that follows the direct object. The example sentences make that very clear. The Johnsons painted their house green. He dyed his hair blue. They made themselves sick. She colored the last Easter eggs yellow. And here's one I'm throwing in. I like my coffee strong. And the final pattern is pattern 8 at the top of page 66, where you have subject, verb, direct object, object complement nominative. Again, that object complement nominative is when the direct object, which is the next to last element there, when the direct object is given an additional name immediately following. So, for example, see the examples in the text. We elected him president of the class. They named their twins, Timmy and Tommy. I declared him the winner of the competition. Why did we elect so many men president of the United States? So now it's time to practice. We're going to take this information and apply it in the following 2 online exercises. And if you're interested, these exercises are in the text on page 189 and page 191. I'll see you again pretty soon, I hope. Thanks.